Now, topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Welcome to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo, Dr. Shirley and medium Kelly White.
Two perspectives, one world.
This is Both Sides Now.
Good night, everybody, and welcome to Both Sides Now. I'm Dr. Shirley.
Hi, and I'm medium Kelly White.
And tonight, we have a very interesting guest because here on Both Sides Now, we like to approach all concepts with curiosity. You know, curiosity is the antidote to judgment. So even if it's something that, doesn't resonate with you or that you don't believe in, that's okay. I think it's really important to be curious about all subjects. So our guest tonight is Claire Candy Hough, who says that she's an angelic walk-in. What is that, you ask? Well, she's here to tell us all about it. And let me just give you a little bit about her background. She has master and teacher degrees in Reiki, crystal healing, and qualifications as a quantum touch practitioner. She helps people fashion a beautiful life and ultimately heal themselves from within. Using her ability as an angel intuitive in counseling and spiritual healings, she not only brings comfort, peace, and direction, and newfound joy and clarity to those who are in despair, but she also motivates and inspires them to see the beauty, magnificence, and power inside themselves. In this way, her clients learn to love themselves again, which is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. She has a teaching degree, and in addition to years as a school teacher, she's been the creator of numerous businesses, from an art studio to a coffee shop to being a co-owner and vice president of a movie theater chain in Washington, D.C. Wow, so she was in the corporate world.
Yeah.
She is the author and publisher of 3 books, Angels of Faith, One True Home, Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness, and I'm an Angelic Walk-In. So welcome, Candy, to our show.
Welcome.
You're so thrilled to have you. It's a very interesting topic that I know nothing about. And Kelly?
I love this topic. You know, as we were saying in the green room, this is really something that is... There's a psychological way to heal, there's a spiritual way to heal, and as Shirley and I try to do both sides, so we would love to talk about the way you heal, because in our practice, day to day, Shirley, we're going to see more and more people that have had different experiences. Right. So I'd ask everybody out there just be open-minded about this interesting, fascinating experience.
Yeah.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about, if you can break it down to kind of the left brain peeps, which I would be one of them, to kind of understand, what happened and how did you, I guess, figure
tell
it
us
out.
about
Yeah,
yourself.
tell us about yourself.
All right. Well, for 47 years, the former soul that was in the body was she was very angry. She was a victim. She didn't take responsibility. She certainly wasn't grateful and appreciative for her life. She basically lived a life blaming others and a lot of judgment, which led to 2 suicide attempts, which led her to basically lose her light. And she just couldn't figure out how to better her life. She kept drawing controlling men to herself, and in this way she had a 26-year abusive marriage. She knew that it was abusive as soon as she stood under the chuppah with him, the traditional Jewish canopy, and but because she had been programmed to marry a certain religion, to marry a certain financial standings, and as she was standing there, she said, "But I don't love him. I don't love him." But it doesn't matter because it checklisted all the other things, and she basically gave her power away, and she asked all the time to exit her contract. She just could not figure life out, and so we across the veil don't want people to suffer interminably. I know that it's very important to learn your lessons in contrast, because those lessons are usually the most important. They come in hardship and adversity to really and get our attention.
Yeah.
But it was so vastly important, especially in the last 30, 40, 50 years, especially since the harmonic convergence of 1987, for as many people to hold as much light as possible for the ascension of the planet.
What is the harmonic?
The harmonic convergence in
Convergence, yeah.
1987 was a tipping point. It, remember all of those prophecies, Nostradamus, how the world was going to end in 2000.
Yeah.
It was the nuclear war and everything else. There were enough people on the planet that decided consciously not to kill off our planet. And those vibrational frequencies started to rise, and they started to rise ever steadily through the 80s, the rest of the 80s, and into the 90s. And we can see it. We can see it in the arc of how people have become more conscious, more loving, more in peace, more wanting to live in harmony. We see a lot in it now in our dual political system. People don't want dual political systems anymore. They want humanity.
Right.
They want to make choices that is not just for the greatest good of self, but is the greatest good of all concerned. But this arc has been steadily growing since that 1987.
Well, it's hard to, just because in the last 6 months, which you, Kelly, have been telling us about, given the way the planets have been aligning, we've had, I think, so much more in a short period of time of attacks and of kind of mass traumas,
Right.
than I think we've had in a while. I mean,
ultimately,
we've had them, but
ultimately, it's to raise the vibration.
It's to raise the
ultimately.
vibrational frequency on the planet. All of these things are ultimately for the greatest good of the planet, because for a long time these things were hidden.
yeah.
They weren't talked about, they weren't shown, and because this is a completion year, it's a 9-year, so many things can't be hidden anymore.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I saw Will Smith in an interview in one of the night shows, and he talked exactly about that. They were asking him about this kind of what was going on in the African American community, and he viewed it exactly that way. He said, before it might have happened, but nobody talked about it. What's happening now is it's out there. So we're talking about it. So, and I thought it was such an interesting and right on perspective, and that's what you're saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
all of these disclosures, all of these reveals are things that have been going on forever. But now, because with the shift in consciousness, it can't be hidden anymore.
Yeah.
And it's got to be revealed, because there can't be anything that's not of truth anymore. And so all these things are coming out. But back to the...
Right, so back
Okay.
to you. Now, when you're, just for our listening audience, when you're referring as she...
To the former soul.
To the former soul
The former
in
soul
your
of
same
Claire
body.
Candy.
Okay.
The former soul of Claire Candy.
Okay.
So
and I'm sorry, do you like to go by Claire Candy or
it doesn't
Candy, or
matter.
does it-
I answer to both. More often Candy.
Okay.
More
all
often
right.
Candy.
Yeah, John had mentioned that. That's why I
Okay.
referred to that in the intro.
But she got to the stage where she asked over and over again to exit. And as I said, those of us on the other side, we don't want to see somebody suffering interminably. But then again, it was so important for people to hold a light on the planet. And she was really a dearth on the planet of light, and, anorexic and suicidal. And
What was her original contract? And would you explain soul contracts? We've talked about them, but
Yeah.
just for the people that need to have a little
her
understanding.
original contract
Yeah.
was that she chose her parents, and she chose to have brothers, and she chose to, get married and have children, and so that's like anybody before they come in stands before the etheric council, and they
Right.
go over, they get their book of life, and they write out their soul contract. What they intend to do. It's the outline of their life, and then their choices and their decisions are dictate then how their life is going to unfold. So that was basically her soul contract. If in the book I Am an Angelic Walk-In, she was actually a student of mine as Angel Ariel. I was in service to the divine and teaching spiritual knowledge on the other side. And so she was one of my students and had not had a physical incarnation before. But she was so enthralled with the different incarnations that I spoke about and the wonderful lessons that I learned in those and how they helped me to grow, that this encouraged her to come back and try her own physical incarnation. That was her first incarnation back. And so I was her guardian angel, and I watched over her every second. And over, she just couldn't keep her life force going anymore. And so then we decided, and actually she decided, because walk-ins, they just don't come on and take over bodies. That person wants to walk out of their contract. And it's 100% their choice whether they want this intersection episode to happen.
And is that something that's agreed before you reincarnate, or
No,
something
no.
that she was conscious of?
No, she was not. You can't consciously ask for a walk-in experience to happen. It's on an unconscious level.
Oh, okay.
It's on an unconscious level. It's
Okay.
that higher self of yours that wants to seek help, because so often a person on the earth plane who has lost their light, they can't see above the fog. And they just can't
yeah.
get themselves out of that loop.
Yeah.
But the higher self is always open to having help. And so she decided that she wanted to walk out, and stop her pain and suffering, and just this emotional trauma that she found herself in.
So what would make the difference between someone who just exits and either commits suicide, or and someone who decides, you're saying at an unconscious level, to have a walk-in?
Okay. Those who suicide, they aren't open enough to understand that they're giving their body over for somebody to come in and take full responsibility of their life, to clean it up, and then to have a mission for a higher purpose for humanity, to be of service to humanity. That soul who suicides would then not be able to go through their transition. They would go to spirit hospital until they're well enough, until they're cocooned and wrapped, and their vibrational frequency, Kelly's nodding, they just can't go through their life's review, and they don't have the strength to go through to the etheric council, or have their homecoming, reunion with their loved ones. And so they would need a lot of care and attention, whereas someone who has decided this on a higher level would be able to go through their life's review and their contract and their book of life. So what happened is I planned an intersection episode with the former soul, and it can happen. It can happen in an accident. Where everybody on the plane dies, and there's just that one person that walks away unscathed. It could happen during a surgery, where after the surgery, people say, "There's something different about you. You're not the same. You're not angry anymore. You're calm. You're peaceful."
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Mine happened during a very deep meditation. She'd only started meditating about 6 weeks before, and it was very different because the former soul had such low self-worth. She only could get maybe about 10 minutes before the monkey mind chatter came in. And I closed my eyes. I lit long taper candles. And this time I decided not to put any music on. And I closed my eyes. And the sun was streaming in through the windows. And I opened my eyes. The room was dark. I looked at the digital clock, and it said 11:11. And I cannot tell you where from 5:30 to 11 o'clock went. But I can tell you, when I woke up, I was very dazed. And the next morning, if you read in the book, I Am an Angelic Walk-In, it was such an extraordinary change in my personality, in my characteristics, and in my tastes. I mean, I looked in the closet and I said, whose clothes are these? I woke up and I was living in a cockroach-infested home that a con man had talked me into buying. And then putting his name on the lease as well. I mean, she lost all sense of who she was. And it was, I can't live like this. Whereas, she was in that loop, flying her plane in this deep emotional fog. And from there, it didn't take me very long to start to honor myself. The greatest change from one day to the next, when I had this experience, was that I took responsibility for my life, every ounce of it. I knew that I had contracted it in my book of life. I forgave others. I didn't say, I forgive you. I said, please forgive me, which that's an enormous difference between I forgive you and please forgive me. Right. There was absolutely no judgment. I was so grateful and appreciative for my blessings and the unconditional love that I had for others and myself after a lifetime of finding blame and being a victim. It was just a 180. And my tastes, when I would listen to like Irish and Celtic music, I would start to weep. I would start to cry, and it touched my heart. And, the former soul's a good Jewish girl from New York. It's like, where's that coming from? Tastes in food, a distinct change in personality. The people that knew me very well, I ran a coffee shop at that stage, and I was always irritated and angry and snippy and, sort of very sarcastic. And they kept on saying, what is with you? You're so calm and you're so peaceful. And, I used to have road rage, and now I would take the long way across, road across, along the coastline, just to, commune with the ocean. And there were just so many different characteristics. The thing about walk-ins is you don't come in with a handbook. And back then in 2003, you come in from a higher dimensional frequency. And so coming from this higher dimension, getting slammed into a third dimension, and believe me, back then it was third dimensional. There was no edging on the fourth or the fifth. There was nothing like that. It gets completely obliterated. So you're flying blind, but all you know is that you're living the wrong life. Everything about it, because the former soul, having that much self-loathing and hate within, of course, because like attracts like, she drew negative people to herself, negative situations and negative business, all of these things. So immediately, I start to honor myself. Honoring and respecting myself were two really major things now after 47 years of not honoring myself. And the voice of God became very clear. For 47 years, if anybody called me Claire, I would have balked at that name. I said, please don't call me Claire. I hate that name. But with the walk-in, with the clairvoyant and the clairsentient and the clairaudient and all the Claires opening up, I now embrace the name Claire as well. And there were different characteristics that I started to live, and I didn't even know the term walk-in.
And so I was going to ask you, from, besides noticing how different you felt and other people noticing how different you were behaving and acting, how did you get to that piece of the walk-in piece? I mean, that seems so...
Yeah. After 3 months of living the characteristics and experiencing them, my angelic family, who are called the Posse of Angels, they led me to an international seer who lived who worked about 20 minutes from me on the Gold Coast in Surfer's Paradise, where I was living. And a friend said, I don't know what you've been through, but I know of somebody who could help you. And she said, the good news is he works 20 minutes from here. The bad news is he's impossible to get a session with. But I have a feeling, just call him up, even if it's a year away or whatever, just get your name in there. Anyway, I called up, and a gentleman answered the phone. He was not Patrick, who was this international seer, who people came from all over the world to see him. And they said, Dennis, he said, hi, Dennis here from it's Tarot Lodge. And I said, look, I've heard how great Patrick is. I want to have a session with him. I don't care when it is. And he said, you must be the luckiest girl in the world. Nobody cancels once they have an appointment. We just had a cancellation. Can you be here in an hour?
Oh, wow.
I walked in. I walked into Tarot Lodge. Dennis took me to a back room, opened the door, and said to Patrick, your client is here. And he was sitting behind a desk. And he stood up, and his eyes became as large as saucers. He walked around the desk, and he took my two hands, and he said, "Beloved lady," he said, "welcome back." He said, "Let me make you a cup of tea and explain to you what's happened." He sat me down without me saying anything, and he explained to me what I had gone through. He said, "You are an angel. You have come from the angelic realm." And he explained to me the characteristics that I went through. And I was bucketing down tears because it was the first time that somebody had explained this. Now, just because somebody tells you this doesn't mean it's so.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So this friend of mine had also at that time said, there's a fellow by the name of John Chamberlain, an older man. He has just come back from the Philippines. I don't know if you're both familiar with the psychic surgeons in the Philippines that go in the body and then
I've
take
heard of
out
that. Yeah.
the dis-ease or whatever. So he was working with those psychic surgeons and in the Philippines. He says, he's just come back. He's like 1 block from you.
Now, where are you living at this
I'm
time?
living on the Gold Coast.
Australia.
Near
in Australia.
Australia,
Oh.
Surfers Paradise.
Okay.
Yeah. My husband and I moved here about 8 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And so I went to see Patrick, and then I was able to book, because he'd just come back, a session with John. And I walked in 2 days later and knocked on his door, and I opened the door, and he's standing there, huge 6-foot, shock of white hair. And I walk in, and he goes, "Whoa, I've never seen anybody with that many angels around you. Hang on. They're telling me that you're one of them." He said, "Do you know that you've had a walk-in experience?"
Wow, so he told you the same thing.
He told me exactly the same
And the
thing.
two did not know each other.
The two
were
did not know
related.
each other. And since then, it's just been confirmed over and over again and over again. But even if anybody, Dr. Shirley, didn't confirm this to me, I know this in my heart. And I know that, you can explain it away with all kinds of different things.
Sure.
But this is what happened to me, and that's the truth, and that's authentic for me, and it's honest, and it's as transparent as I can be. I don't tell my story for ego. I don't tell it for any other reason, but the joy of being authentic and coming out of a closet, like somebody would come out who was gay,
Right,
or somebody
right.
who would come out that, I mean, I'm reading Shattered Love, which is Richard Chamberlain's biography, and he didn't come out until he was 67 years of age. And to think about, living, not being able to tell your story,
Right.
It creates dis-ease in the body.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Kelly, you always say that it was harder to come out as a medium
It was
than...
very hard for me to come out as a medium. It would have been easier to be gay. I mean, to come out as gay than to be a medium. It was especially
Nowadays.
But I had,
Before it was
I had
a huge struggle.
my experience. I had a traumatic brain injury in 2000, and I'm not sure if I had a walk-in experience, but I can say that so much of my life changed, completely changed after my head injury. I didn't have the same taste. I mean, it's so interesting to hear you say that. My personality really changed a great deal. I mean, I was kind of on a road to hell. I mean, I was, I really was pretty intense. I mean, I was very intense, and I had work, and I was a corporate person, and I just. I cannot believe that the change was kind of night and day. It was a 180.
Yeah, 180.
In me too.
Yeah.
And I started seeing angels everywhere.
Yes.
In fact, so much so that I ended up, developing a pillow called my angel pillow.
Yeah.
I mean, I really was about angels, and so I'm not sure if I did or if I didn't.
My
I'm not
posse,
sure.
my posse of angels are saying to me that you did.
Oh my God! I got chills.
And the the chills. The characteristics. There are certain characteristics which are endemic to walk-ins. First of all, many walk-ins will change their names because they don't resonate with the former name. I adopted my given name, Claire, because of all the Claires coming in. But there are some people that just don't, resonate with the name, and they will go through a whole name change. The second is all walk-ins will leave their partners. Will leave.
Oh, that was what I did.
Even
immediately. Immediately, I did. Yeah, immediately.
I must be psychic.
Yeah.
Even long-standing relationships. Because if you go to bed with Tom, and then one night and you wake up and you go, It's like
Right.
you just don't
Yes.
resonate with people anymore. And
So true.
it was many years in a row that we won the best, coffee shop on the Gold Coast, and I knew so many people, and she was quite, with her darkness, she was quite a nightclubber. She was quite a party girl, and when I walked in, they would call, hey, we're going to meet at the Blue Note and Surfers, at 11 o'clock, blah, 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 and I'd say, thank you very much, thank you, but I'm sorry, I can't come out tonight, but thank you very much for asking me. And they said, what's wrong with you?
What happened to you?
What happened to you? I was the ultimate party girl, and just the same thing. I was never mean. I was never aggressive or anything. But thank you very much. But no. And so that changed. I knew immediately that I needed to be of service in some way. I didn't quite know. It wasn't until I found out the term walk-in that my Reiki master presented herself. And she had been a nurse who had come consistently to my coffee shop, but I never knew she was a Reiki master. And I bumped into her soon after I met this John Chamberlain. And he said, "Whoa! You look at all those angels, and you're one of them." And then she met me and bumped into me, and she went, "My gosh!" She says, "You're not the same person." She said, "You've gone through such an extraordinary transformation." And then she looked off in the distance and she goes, "They're saying they want me to teach you Reiki, and they're saying that I can't charge you. And the master's degree is like thousands of dollars." And my partner at the time was a con man, and he had stolen money through the business, and I just didn't have any money. And she said, "They're telling me that Reiki is going to be so important to you." And she took me through 2 of the master degrees, one in Seshem Sekhem and the other in the traditional Asui. And very soon after that, I started to hang up my shingle and got a business license. And then I started just magically drawing people to myself.
And doing Reiki.
And doing Reiki and healings. And I created, and probably the most important thing for me that I asked for, because the way that the walk-in came about, yes, my student who had been in my class across the veil, she was in very deep trouble, but I transcended the birth and death wheel. I didn't want to come back to this lunacy of a planet. And so the Etheric Council actually asked me if I would come back. They said, and especially, and we spoke about this, especially after 2001. See, since 1987 to 2000, there was an accumulation of light on the planet. I have inside knowledge, but I do believe that the new monetary system was going to be introduced, that there was going to be UFO disclosure. And then 9/11 happened, and so much of the world went back into fear, and the light started to recede. And so from 2001, 2002, 2000, all of those times, there was an influx of walk-ins at that stage. People left hope. Actually, my husband's father had a stroke, and when I tuned into him, he said, if this can happen on our planet, what else can happen? And so many people just lost hope at that stage.
Yeah.
So it was important to bring up as much light as possible at that stage. So anyway, Kelly, I really do believe that you did have a walk-in experience.
I think I may have.
Yeah,
I may have.
yeah.
I loved in your book when you talked about the negative imprint, how when you took this body, when
Yes.
you came in, that the old soul, it was so negative, and that you, as the new soul entering, you didn't have to pick up the negative imprints.
And I was going to get the third thing about walk-ins is we inherit the former soul's mental imprint. I know it's like a computer chip. I remember everything that she went through in her life, and it's just, it is just like a computer chip. But we don't inherit their emotional imprint. We just don't get it.
That's nice.
And so if we did, it would actually stop us from stepping forth on our mission. And you just don't come in as a walk-in to have another walk around the planet, and try on a physical
Well, yeah,
body.
because I think that stops people from living to their fullest potential.
Absolutely.
Is the old unresolved traumas and unhealed wounds and that kind of thing. So it kind of wouldn't.
Well, and what happened with me,
see-
Shirley,
be
is
any
I
different.
didn't have any more fear
Yes,
of
that's right.
anything, really.
Yeah.
There was no more fear. The fear just kind of seemed to just leave.
Yeah. God,
Which was surprising to me.
I started to hear the voice of God. God became really important to me. The former soul was never religious,
me
never
too.
spiritual. Yet I will to will His will, and He says jump, I say how high. Tells me to move continents, as my twin flame Pete and myself did 8 years ago. Move, sell your beautiful beach house, come to California. You know no one. You don't have any jobs at the beginning of the recession, and everything will work out for you. And it's, he's, he, she, it, all that is, has told us, you're going to move. You need to book a moving company in 3 months' time. And the moving company asks us, where are you moving? And we say, well, we know this when we moved from Monterey Bay Area down to Santa Barbara. We said, well, we know we're moving down to Santa Barbara because, got those signs, but we don't know where we're moving yet. And the house didn't present itself until 1 week before the move. And if God tells us to do something, then He will provide. We've done that twice. People can't understand, how do you book a move when you don't know where you're, you don't have a house to go to.
To say the least, but is because of you and what is his
Pete.
name?
Peter, yeah.
So is he hearing the same things that you're hearing, or how is it that he kind of
he is very
goes along with it?
He is
or?
no, just doesn't go along with it. He is on the same wavelength. 9 months after I walked in, actually 3 months when I found out about the walk-in and that whole thing, it was then that I took a piece of paper and I wrote, I have compromised, meaning the former soul, I've compromised myself in love, and I will show you that I will never compromise myself again. And at the top of the page I wrote, thank you for my soulmate relationship. And I scribbled out soulmate, and I put thank you for my twin flame relationship and marriage, because I like the ritual. If you read One True Home Behind the Veil of Forgetfulness and my 5 most important past lives that I grew the most, it shows that, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that?
You'd written the note about
I'd written the
for-
note,
yeah.
and to see how I'd compromised myself in love before. But now I said I would honor myself, and I want my twin flame. And I'd had gone through very many rituals in those, and I like the ritual. I like the ceremony. And the second line, the angels wrote automatically, I live in a comfortable home near the ocean. And then it went on to write the characteristics of my twin flame. We travel the world together. We work together. We're the best of friends. We allow each other to be exactly who they are. Nothing, absolutely nothing, no money, no success, no ego, nothing is more important than this relationship. And for those people that may not know, a twin flame relationship is a triad, and God is always at the top. And He is on the same wavelength because He knows that this relationship and its mission is God-driven. So the gifts and talents of one twin is married with the gifts and talents of the other twin. For instance, I've written books. He is in the film and movie industry. We've written screenplays together. We're going to be making movies about the books and getting this message of love and unity and peace out to a much wider audience in a very creative way. So I wrote this decree, and I slept with it under my pillow, and I used to very ritualistically say it every morning and every night. And I used to go down to the water, lived near the ocean, and put my toes in the ocean, and I used to cast the words out across the water and said, thank you. Not I need or I want, because I knew He was mine. He just hadn't appeared on the physical plane as yet. And I did that for 6 months, and within 6 weeks He was around me. I could feel him. I'd say, and then for the when I would say those words at night, I would pull the covers over him and I would kiss him and I would pat him on the head when he was there etherically, but he wasn't there physically.
Yeah.
And then it was 6 months later at a Come As Your Favorite Rock Star party. I went as a Stevie Nicks, and the only Elvis out of about 100 people came, and with the white jumpsuit, the
And that
gold
was
buckle,
Pete.
the red cape, and the pompadour hairdo, and the aviator glasses.
Right.
And when Pete walked in, I was at a stragglers table. I didn't know anybody, and these people didn't know anybody, and he tried to make movement to people that he did know, and somebody at my table. He actually said he felt like his feet were in cement. He couldn't make movement. And somebody at my table said, "Yo, Elvis is in the house. Elvis, come sit come sit at our table." And he walked over and he sat at our table. And 5 hours later, we were still talking. And 5 days later, he asked to marry me.
Wow.
3 days. He wanted to ask me after 3 days. But he said his head said, "How can you ask this woman to marry you? It's just..." But at the 5th day, what was different, he said he felt the hand of God on his back, nudging him forward and saying, "Just ask her to marry you and everything will work out."
Wow. And that was how many years later?
And in November, it'll be 14.
Wow.
And we are the best of buddies. We are on an adventure, and we just know we are just so divinely blessed.
Now, did he have any sort of a walk-in experience?
No. But the funny thing is, before the walk-in experience, I was going through an horrific relationship with this con man who, talked me into buying this business, and I'd had a 26-year abusive marriage. And so I really didn't learn much, the former soul really didn't learn much from that because it was a frying pan into the fire,
Right.
And then she drew this guy to herself. And because she didn't do the work within, the lesson got much harder on the outside. And at the same time that I was visiting her in her dream state, because this thing does, between walk-in and the earth soul just doesn't happen immediately. I must have been visiting her in her dream state for about 2.5 years, because somebody can ask and say, "Oh, I want out of here," in theory, but in practice, it's a very different thing.
Yeah.
So
Was there any spirituality with your former self?
no,
Okay.
0.
0. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, the question I guess that I'm having is, do people who also have had this walk-in experience that you're talking about, like you, for example, you refer to you haven't had that distinction of saying my former self and
what
me.
I'll do is, I will say,
So-
who I was is not who I am now. I've
Who
said
you were
that many
before,
times.
right? Well, you have.
I
Yeah,
have,
you
and
said
I
that.
actually have called it my
So-
former self.
Have you made that distinction just to kind of make it a little bit clear?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes.
But not everyone who has had a walk-in experience would make that same distinction
Right.
of her and
And
me.
there are a lot of, it's interesting, in an interview I was asked, do a lot of walk-ins not understand what's happened to them? And it's yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of walk-ins don't make it, because to this day, it's been almost 14 years. It was January 11th, 2003, when the walk-in happened. And every second of every day is difficult for me to be in the world, but not of it. To incarnate in a human form,
Right.
and be grounded enough in this human form. There are a lot of people that have walk-ins that are just floating around. They're very airy-fairy. They can't ground themselves.
That's funny you would say that, because that's what I really spent a lot of my time the first 3 or 4 or 5 years actually getting grounded.
Yeah.
That was really important to me, get grounded. In fact, that's one of the reasons I went back to school, actually. So,
Yeah.
though I understand that.
So
I was
it's-
wondering, what percentage of people that this has happened to? Do you have any idea?
This was a while back. The Posse of Angels said that maybe there's maybe 1 million walk-ins on the planet,
Wow.
but they're not going to all congregate in the same area, because I wouldn't say each walk-in. A walk-in that is on their game. Let's call it on their game, that they know why they're here. They've cleaned up and then taken the full responsibility for the former soul's life. And then they're on their mission of love and peace and, whatever way that they want to creatively bring that forth on the planet. Each one of them, unless they understand, unless they're holding that light, they don't make it. A lot of them don't make it because it's so difficult.
So are you saying that a lot of them will do the walk-in but then not remember, and so kind of
Yes,
live in
well,
the state
first
I
of
don't
all,
feel like myself, but I don't know what this is, and just kind of
yeah,
not.
yeah. And I was very fortunate that it was 3 months that I found out the term.
That somebody walked you, that somebody kind of suggested, hey, go see this person.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I see.
Yes, exactly.
But I think, what I really believe is, because what happened to me is I was all of a sudden the universe would guide me to meet this one or this one or this one. And I'm sure that's
right.
exactly what
it's
happened.
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens. It's kind of that term when the student's ready, the teacher appears. I
Absolutely.
mean, I've had
You
things
bet.
happen like that to me too, where I'm thinking about something, or I say to myself, okay, I'm ready to learn about this, and all of a sudden someone shows up, hey, I've been wanting to give you this book or something like that.
Because you're open
So-
to receive.
Yeah.
You're open to receive.
But, I mean, this, although I've never heard about this phenomena, to me, it's really no different than believing in God or any kind of even organized religion. Nobody really knows. We believe it because either we're born with it, and so it's kind of a familiar idea.
Right.
But it's no different than just believing because you have faith or because it resonates with you or it feels right.
Right.
It's not something that you can see. Neither is really the
Well-
religious beliefs. They aren't either.
The interesting thing is, and the way I explain it, people say, but a soul exchange? And I said, God created the egg, and he created the sperm. And when he put them together, there was life. But where does the soul come from?
Right.
In every culture, in every faith, in every tribe out there, they talk about the soul. It's got to come from someplace else to inhabit the baby.
Yeah.
So when you get that concept, then it's not so hard to understand that if a person on the earth plane does not want to keep their contract going anymore, that they can choose from a higher level to walk out.
Right.
And then have
someone else.
and it has to be a spiritually advanced soul.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
That was
Yeah.
going to be my question. I was going to hi John here. So, just not to scare
John,
anybody.
our engineer, I'm so sorry.
No. That
I
was
was
gonna
so
be-
fascinated about this topic. I even forgot to introduce
no,
you here
it's
today.
all good. And I've been so
John's
just
always here,
transfixed
everyone.
listening to it all. And I guess my question is a lot of times we don't hear that angels incarnate in human form, and if they do, it's for just a brief period of time. So the fact of you being an angelic coming in as a walk-in, how often does that happen? And are other souls on the other side not angelic and come in, or is there a difference?
Well, there's different types of walk-ins.
Okay.
The one we're most familiar with is like the hierarchic one. Jesus came in. He was Lord Sananda, the ascended master, Lord Sananda. Buddha, maybe a Moses. They come back to bring tremendous amounts of light to the planet. Then there are star seeds, which are from other planets that come in to bring technology and bring advanced states, alternatives for health or things like this. And then there are just not just, but advanced. Spiritually advanced spirit guides that come in. I don't know the percentage
Yeah.
of angelics,
Right.
but the reason that my mission was to come back was because we are getting very close to disclosure on this planet, to finally understand that we all come from someplace else, that we are multidimensional beings, and that there's the angelic realm, there are star seeds, there are people from different beings from other dimensions.
Yeah, it's interesting because now the study of quantum physics, which
Yes.
is now really going into the scientific realm, is showing, is almost proving the different dimensions. And so I think
Absolutely.
it's opening up scientists' mind to think that, hey, there's something else out there and it's not just what we see.
Yes, and for so long, it's been hidden. And oh no, we're the only planet in the universe with life anymore. In order for to keep us in that control And because if you see yourself as a multidimensional being, then you see yourself as powerful. You see yourself as boundless and limitless. And you know that all of this is an illusion and that you're creating it from the power within yourself. And then when you have that power, then nobody can control you. And most of the matrix of this world has been the governments, politicians, what gets in our
that's-
food, and
and that's part of what personally turned me off from religion. I was raised Catholic, and I read a book that in the times of St. Augustine, the Catholics, I guess,
Yes.
used to believe in reincarnation. And I always thought, even as a little kid, I always thought this can't just be it, because what makes you, that essence, not just your heart beating, but that essence, can't just disappear when the heart stops. So I always thought, and then I read that in the times of St. Augustine, they thought that if people thought, hey, I can come back, then it's, sex, drugs, rock and roll. I don't have to follow the laws because I'll come back. And so that's when they decided to say that believing in reincarnation was a sin. And when I read that, I said,
I'm out of here.
I couldn't, yeah. So it was a process. I still baptized my daughter.
Right.
And still called myself Catholic. And then a few years after that, stopped calling myself Catholic. And then it took me a while to, every time I drove by a church, to not, have the impulse to you do the sign of the cross. I don't even know what side it goes, but I would remember my right hand because that's the hand you use to do the sign of the cross. You never do it with your left. So I would remember my right from my left. As a kid, that's how I learned.
That's good.
So it took me a while to kind of that impulse to stop doing it. And I just, I think it helps a lot of people, but I couldn't go with this is how we control people and how we make people, many organized religions make people feel bad for being who they are, whether it's
sin.
Exactly, the sin of like a gay lifestyle, or I can't go with something that makes people feel bad for who they are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So that's kind of what turned me off from it.
Right. And I was getting back to the checklist. There are one thing that's endemic to walk-ins who are, when I say on their game, it's they're taking that responsibility, cleaning up the light, and then they're getting on with their mission, is they hold a tremendous amount of light. And so all million wouldn't be in one place. Right. They would be scattered amongst the around the planet, because each walk-in is the same as one of those hierarchical figures that holds the light for close to 750 to 50,000 to 1 million people. That's how much light that they hold. And so they're put in different areas of the world where they can hold the light. And wherever I've gone and wherever I've been led, I keep creating communities of light, and which then, sparks different people for shifting and holding their own light and all of that. So it's wonderful.
So I guess it's just not making sense in my mind about why somebody would have a walk-in but then not really kind of do what they walked in to do, and they're kind of just, as you said, some people don't know.
Because they have free will.
Yeah, that's the duality here. We have free will.
You have free will, and it,
and you don't remember that you're from the other side, and you just walked into this person's body.
No, exactly.
I see.
And there are many, many walk-ins that bump around for many years. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years, and they don't know what's happened to them, and they can't quite, get any traction to then create that
In
life.
Kelly's case is very interesting. I mean, you're a very highly evolved soul, Kelly, and you work as a medium, and here you're learning about walk-ins, and now you're identifying.
I am identifying
It's
with
just it's breakthrough in some ways.
I kind of thought this some years ago. I thought I knew something had happened to me. I didn't know how to explain what had happened to me, but that soul that was there, I knew didn't exist anymore.
Didn't exist anymore.
I knew that very well, and I knew things that I couldn't possibly have known.
That's the thing that you know things, and you don't know from whence they came.
Right.
I was just to just go back a little bit. I was gonna say one of the characteristics of walk-ins is they youth as they get older, and I just turned 60.
Wow.
No way.
Wow.
I told you, it's just amazing. Yeah.
I'm gonna
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the light. It's the light within, and there's nothing that triggers. There's nothing that triggers me. There's nothing that makes me reactive, because it's there is because if you know that you create everything on the outside, it's all for your highest good and the greatest good of all concerned, and it's all wonderful. It even what we see in the TV. That needs to be seen, like a sickness or a disease reaches a fever pitch in order to become worse, in order for the fever to break, and then the immune system in the body to really kick in.
The breakdown before the breakthrough.
This really gives us another lens, Shirley.
Yeah.
Psychologically, it gives you another lens, because the other day in my practice, I saw a woman. Actually, she came in for a reading. I saw her 3 months ago. So 3 months ago, she came in for a reading, and she was this real intense, kind of negative, intense, fierce, just difficult, mean, actually. And I was surprised she came back very recently. 3 months ago, I saw her. She came back in the last several days, and she was a different person. I was so surprised at what a different person she was. Calm, nice, spiritual. I mean, very different. Well, I had your book on my table, and I said to her, boy, there's a difference here. What's going on? And she said, well, I really don't know. She said, I had a surgery. She had some sort of oddball surgery that just came up from the last time I'd seen her to this time. And she said, I'm going to do this with my life, and I know I'm going to do this. And it was such a dramatic change that I actually pointed out to her. I said, you might want to read this book. Because what I'm saying with the different lenses, you'll notice in your practice, because now that we've met you, we may get more, these things possibly could happen. You'll see more.
And I think,
it's more open to it.
Right. And I think it's that, if someone resonates with it like that, if somebody comes and now,
this was
I'm
so
aware
clear
if they
to me.
tell me, I don't know what happened, I'm changed, then I would offer that and say, read it and see if it resonates with you. And to me, I think, and we're both, the reason why we work together is we're passionate about helping people, kind of like what I said in the intro for you, live their life to their fullest potential and be, as fulfilled, and I don't want to say happy, like we don't walk around happy all the time, but, and so if this is one component of it, then
Right.
yeah.
What I say,
fascinating to me.
What I say is, once we get back to our divine eternal natures, and our divine eternal natures are one of bliss, wholeness, completeness, pure love. I mean, once we really get back to that kind of consciousness, then our lives move forward with ease and grace, and we draw the same to ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's funny you would say that, because I would feel. From that point on, I started feeling joy and happy. And those were words to me back in the day, before 2000, joy and happy. It almost seems silly. But I actually really mean that. I have so much joy and I have so much happiness constantly.
Yeah, and I think
I actually feel it.
What's important, right? I think what's important to state is that it's not like you're feeling like that all day long, and things that happen in your life don't cause you to feel anger or sadness or something.
But it's less than
but
that.
It almost seems, but what I've seen is you bounce back. Kind of your homeostasis place changes.
It's over
There's no
somewhere.
more spikes.
Whereas maybe someone was more anxious, they're more calm overall, but you still, emotions are like waves in the ocean. You still feel.
That's another one, Shirley. I used to be very anxious and very depressed. I mean, constant.
Yeah.
That ceased to exist for me. Honestly, after my head injury.
So interesting.
I was never anxious again and never depressed again.
I wonder, it reminds me, since you're saying that it's something that happens to someone, I don't know the full story but the name Eckhart Tolle keeps coming to my mind, because he talks about how he went through a really depression, and then all of a sudden.
Yes.
And he came to the Monterey Bay area, which is a very spiritual area, to write The Power of Now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That
And
is so
I've always
interesting.
believed that Eckhart Tolle is a walk-in.
That's so, because when you were talking, his name kept coming into my mind, going, because I had
you're a
heard the story.
walk-in.
There you go.
Hey, what do you know?
You never know.
Because I heard, that he was very depressed, and then something changed. Of course,
And you see him now. I mean, he's just in such a state of bliss, of peace, and more than that, it's a state of allowance. And when you're in that state of allowance, your world is not predicated on circumstances in your external world.
Well, because I think above and beyond everything, there's this trust that things will that everything will unfold and happen the way it's supposed to. And I
Yes.
think when the more I allow for that, the more, things can happen, but it doesn't, like you said, it's not that kind of core, it doesn't shake me to the core.
Yeah.
Because there's this kind of trust that things
Yeah.
will happen.
Go with the
this
flow,
is-
Cheryl.
Go with the flow. This is so interesting.
Isn't it? It's
very
My left
fascinating.
brain is going crazy.
I know
I
it
bet.
is.
So
I know it is,
Will you
but-
stay and we can do a part 2 because
I
we're
would-
running out of time, and I would love to keep talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
John?
Absolutely.
I love that. So, and let's give our website. So it's angelhealinghouse.com. And Kenny, can you share a little bit about what you're doing today? Just
Yeah, can people call
Yeah.
and have sessions with you? and-
Absolutely. I do in my sessions. I angel readings. Every session starts with an intuitive counseling session, and I show them their life from a higher perspective to see why they contracted certain people to be in their lives, what lessons they still needed to learn from previous incarnations, things they needed to work on, and so a lot of the blame just sort of melts away, and to take accountability for their decisions. And most of the time it's because they didn't listen to their intuition or because they didn't honor themselves. And so I take clients into my Santa Monica office or nationally and internationally over Skype and phone.
And you do a radio show?
Distant healing, and I do a radio show every Tuesday.
Oh, wonderful.
International radio show. I don't have any guests. Posse of Angels told me 5 years ago not to have any guests because the first half an hour is channeled information on how different topics on how people can get direction and clarity and more self-love and all kinds of things. And then the next half an hour is taking callers from all over the world. I've had people from Jordan and England and Ireland
my
and
goodness.
Italy and
In
What is
LA.
the name? Right. What is the name of the show? The
it's
radio show.
Angel Healing House Radio, and it's on Blog Talk Radio.
Okay.
I actually called in the other day. That's why I said in LA. So, yes, she was amazing.
And my books, I spend an inordinate amount of time channeling my books, and I just love it.
Wow.
Love being an author and a writer.
Thank you so much for being with
Oh,
us.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And we are going to tape a part 2, which we will figure out. We'll let you know
Yeah.
on our Facebook page. So go ahead and what is our Facebook page?
It's
I forget
at
these
Both
things.
Sides Now TV. So on Facebook, Both Sides Now TV.
So go on there, like us, and we'll announce when we're going to have part 2 with Candy, and of course all the other
Yeah.
shows. And what's our Twitter?
Same thing, at Both Sides Now TV.
Okay. Thank you so much
You're
for
so
coming
welcome.
tonight
It's
and
such a joy.
talking to us about this subject. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo Dr. Shirley and Kelly White.
Two perspectives, one world.